Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie were once a Hollywood power couple, but their marriage suddenly ended for reasons no one could explain. Theirs wasn't just another Hollywood romance that fizzled out. It was a marriage tangled in mystery and a love that left more questions than answers. What really happened between them? Why did a love so wild, so all-consuming vanish overnight? Billy Bob Thornton stayed silent for decades, but now we finally know what went wrong between him and Angelina. And what he finally admitted changes everything we thought we knew, because beneath the headlines and the endless public display of affection was something no one saw coming. And when you find out the truth about their marriage, you'll never see them the same way again. Billy Bob. Before Angelina Jolie came crashing into Billy Bob Thornton's world like a Hollywood hurricane, there was a different Billy. We're talking about a man who was broke, struggling, heartbroken more times than he could count, and juggling marriages that almost always ended in flames. He had the talent, the grit, and the weird quirks, but he also had a trail of emotional chaos behind him. Jolie's first wife was a woman named Melissa Lee Gatlin. They got married in 1978. When Billy was still finding his way in life, he was just a young man chasing dreams, and was not yet famous or successful. Melissa wasn't in the public eye, and very little is known about her personal life. But she and Billy had a daughter together named Amanda Brumfield. Unfortunately, their marriage didn't last. They divorced just 2 years later. In 1980, Melissa later revealed that their split was due to incompatibility and infidelity on Billy's part. Billy himself later admitted that he wasn't a great husband in his early years. He struggled with commitment issues, emotional baggage, and the pressure of trying to make it in Hollywood. Things with Amanda, his daughter, became complicated too, and for a long time they were estranged. Billy wasn't really present in her life, especially as his Hollywood career took off later. That distance created wounds that took decades to heal, and some that maybe never did. Billy's next marriage was to Toni Lawrence, an actress best known for her work in the 80s. Billy married her in 1986, and by this time, he was still trying to get traction in Hollywood. He was getting cast in small parts, working on his writing, and constantly hustling. Unfortunately, the marriage to Toni was also short-lived. They were divorced by 1988, just 2 years later. There weren't many public details about their split, but from what's been hinted at over the years, it seems like Billy's relentless pursuit of his career put a massive strain on their relationship. Late nights writing scripts, hustling for roles, and always being broke made it hard to build a stable marriage on that kind of chaos. Plus, Billy had always admitted to having a bit of a wandering heart. He loved love, but staying in it was the hard part for him. Then came Cinda Williams. This was his first marriage that really blended love and work. Cinda was an actress and singer, and she starred alongside Billy in the 1992 thriller One False Move, a film he co-wrote. The chemistry between them was undeniable, both on-screen and off. They got married in 1980, and at first it seemed like a creative power couple in the making. But just like the ones before, this marriage didn't last. They were divorced by 1992. Billy's career was starting to move during this time. He was writing more, acting more, and slowly getting pulled deeper into the industry. As his focus shifted, so did his emotional availability. And for Cinda, that just wasn't sustainable. He later said in interviews that they both had no business being married because they were just friends. But Billy's fourth marriage to Pietra Dawn Cherniak, a former Playboy model, was where things got really intense. They tied the knot in 1993 and had 2 sons together, Harry James and William. From the outside, this looked like Billy's most stable relationship so far. He had a family. He was getting steady work, and things seemed okay. But behind closed doors, things were unraveling. In 1997, after 4 years of marriage, Pietra filed for divorce. And it was a messy one. She accused Billy of physical and emotional maltreatment, claiming he would throw furniture, punch walls, and even maltreat her in front of their kids. Now, Billy has always denied the allegations. In later interviews, he said he was not that guy, and that things got blown out of proportion. But regardless of what really happened, the damage was done. Pietra got full custody of the kids, and Billy's reputation took a hit. He seemed to carry a deep sense of guilt after that incident, not just for the failed marriage, but for how his behavior had affected his children. This was a turning point for him. It was clear that the pattern of falling fast, marrying quickly, and things exploding was catching up with him. He was starting to realize that he might not be built for marriage, but that didn't stop him from diving headfirst into one more high-profile romance. Just when you'd think he'd slow down, take a breath, maybe go to therapy, he met the wild, fearless, and unpredictable Angelina Jolie. But what really happened between Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie is a story that will leave you shocked. Billy and Angelina's love story. No one really saw it coming when Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie met on the set of Pushing Tin in 1999. It was a quirky film about air traffic controllers, not exactly the setting you'd expect for a romance to bloom, but sometimes chemistry doesn't wait for the right time or place. On set, something just sparked between them. It wasn't slow or subtle. Their connection came fast, like a switch flipped. People who were around during filming later described an almost electric shift in the air whenever they were together. While others were running lines or staying in character, Billy and Angelina were, quietly and quickly, falling into something that felt much deeper. But the story wasn't simple, and there was a major complication waiting off-screen. You see, Billy was 44 years old at the time, while Angelina was just 24. They were 20 years apart, living completely different lives, coming from totally different worlds. And yet, somehow, they connected. According to both of them, they were drawn to each other's intensity, and that shared feeling of being outsiders in Hollywood who were misunderstood, emotionally complicated, and a little wild. But there was just one problem. Billy Bob Thornton was already engaged. At the time Billy met Angelina, he was actually engaged to someone else, an actress named Laura Dern. The two had been living together, building a life many assumed was heading toward marriage. It wasn't just a casual relationship, they were serious and almost settled. But whatever was happening behind closed doors, it all came crashing down the moment Billy crossed paths with Angelina. While Laura was away filming, Billy and Angelina's whirlwind romance took center stage. And not long after, without any public buildup or announcements, they quietly tied the knot in Las Vegas in May 2000. The news sent shockwaves through Hollywood. One moment Billy was planning a wedding with Laura, the next, he was married to Angelina Jolie. Just like that, Laura reportedly found out like the rest of the world did. Through the media, making the experience too sudden, extremely cold and heartbreaking. In an interview, she said, "I left our home to work on a movie. And while I was away, my boyfriend got married. And I've never heard from him again. It's like a sudden death. For no one has there been an enclosure or clarity. The public was stunned. No one could say for sure if the marriage was impulsive or premeditated. And neither Billy nor Angelina jumped to explain it right away. If they felt any remorse or guilt, they didn't show it. At least, not publicly. At that point, they were fully immersed in their new life together. And the firestorm they'd lit behind them only added to the drama of it all. Billy and Angelina were completely obsessed with each other. Their love wasn't quiet. It wasn't calm. It was explosive, chaotic, and all-consuming. In fact, they were known to be affectionate everywhere. Angelina would show up to Billy's movie sets just to be close to him, even when she wasn't in the film. They constantly praised each other in public, called each other soulmates, and made it clear to the world that they didn't want to be apart for more than a few hours. But it wasn't just all passion and headlines. There were softer, quieter moments too. like the time Angelina decided she wanted to become a mother. In March 2002, Angelina adopted her first child, a baby boy named Maddox Chivan from Cambodia. Billy was right there during the process. He traveled with her, met Maddox, and was initially seen as the child's father figure. Angelina later said that she always knew she wanted to be a mother, and that Maddox completely changed her life. For Billy, though, the transition was much harder. He loved kids. He had kids of his own. But the sudden leap into parenting again with a new wife and a very different lifestyle may have been more than he was ready for. Still, for a moment, it seemed like they were building something lasting. A family, a home. But behind the public smiles and red carpet kisses, something was already breaking. In 2002, just 2 years after their whirlwind marriage, the couple started appearing less and less together in public. Interviews became more vague. The wild stories stopped, and the rumors started. People whispered about fights, distance, and growing differences. Then, in June 2002, only months after adopting Maddox, Billy and Angelina quietly separated. There were no dramatic announcements or messy press conferences. In fact, it wasn't until May 2003, a full year later, that their divorce was finalized. And just like that, one of the wildest love stories in Hollywood ended with barely a whisper. But what happened between them? Why did two people so crazy in love crash so quickly? Everyone wanted to know the reason for the sudden divorce. But many people never knew just how controversial their marriage was from the start. The controversies in their marriage. When Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie said, "I do," the world didn't know what hit it. They weren't your average Hollywood couple, they weren't quiet or conventional, and they absolutely weren't concerned with what anybody thought. But what happens when love becomes a performance? When passion spills into headlines, and every move becomes a spectacle? This is where their love story got messy. Because while the romance was real, so were the controversies. From day one, it became clear to everyone that their marriage was wrapped in controversy. From the way they got together, to the strange things they did in public, to the people they left behind, Billy and Angelina lived their love out loud. And Hollywood had a lot to say about it. Perhaps the most obvious issue was their public displays of affection. Billy and Angelina went all in with displaying their affection. They would make out on red carpets and even speak openly about their personal lives. At the 2000 MTV Movie Awards, the two showed up holding hands, looking smitten. But then, Angelina leaned into the mic and casually told the world some really personal details about their lives. The crowd and the media were in shock, but that was just the beginning. Every appearance together felt like a scene from an R-rated movie. For some fans, it was entertaining. For some critics, it was too much, but no one could deny the fact that they had chemistry. However, passion like that can burn bright, but it can also burn everything else down. When asked about the reactions to the criticism, they both brushed it off. In their minds, nothing about their behavior felt unusual. They weren't putting on a show, that was just how they were. However, the most controversial part of their marriage was when they introduced the blood vials. If you've heard anything about Billy and Angelina's marriage, you've probably heard about the tiny glass vials of each other's blood they wore around their necks. According to both of them, it wasn't meant to be creepy, just symbolic. They were about to spend time apart, and Angelina wanted something that would make her feel connected to him. So she took a little blood from his finger, put it in a tiny flower locket, wore it around her neck, and Billy did the same. The media lost it. The story blew up. Headlines called it weird names, talk shows cracked jokes about it, and commentators wondered if it was a cry for help or just a publicity stunt. But while some people loved how raw and romantic it was, others thought it was downright disturbing. Billy later said, "The necklaces were a very simple thing, but by the time it came out in the press, It sounded like we were wearing a bucket of blood around our necks. But even that response felt a little cheeky. They knew people would talk, and part of them, honestly, seemed to enjoy it. Because for Billy and Angelina, being misunderstood was kind of the point. It wasn't meant to be a shocking statement. They saw it as something deeply personal and meaningful. A symbol of closeness during a time when they were physically apart due to work commitments. They never expected it to become a headline. When the press blew it up, they seemed more amused than offended, though it definitely added another layer to their wild couple image. Another thing people couldn't stop talking about was the 20-year age difference between them. Now, Hollywood has always been weirdly okay with older men dating younger women, but this was different because Angelina wasn't some wide-eyed ingenue, and Billy wasn't trying to pretend he was young and hip. He looked and talked like a man who had lived through some things. Angelina, on the other hand, was this ethereal force who was beautiful and dangerous and completely unpredictable. Together, they didn't look like they made sense, but emotionally, they matched. Still, that 20-year gap made people uncomfortable, and it added fuel to every rumor. Some thought he was taking advantage of her, while others thought she was just going through a phase. But for the two of them, age wasn't the issue, and they never apologized for it. Nor did they feel the need to explain. Perhaps the most controversial shadow that hung over their relationship for years was Laura Dern, Billy Thornton's ex-fiancée. The way the breakup and marriage to Angelina had happened was so cold it cast a strange light on the entire relationship. Suddenly, everything Billy and Angelina did felt more scandalous, and it painted a picture of a man who left without looking back, and a new wife who didn't seem to care. Unfortunately, in Hollywood, that kind of scandal sticks, and it followed them everywhere, no matter how in love they seemed. Since Billy and Angelina were officially a couple, the media couldn't get enough of them. Every move they made was followed, every photo dissected, and every rumor given front-page treatment. People speculated endlessly about their private life. There were endless rumors about their relationship, which were all based on little more than their dramatic public persona. But the truth was, the fact that much of it was exaggerated. However, because they didn't feel the need to clarify or defend themselves, the speculation kept growing, and the more they stayed silent, the more the rumors took on a life of their own. Billy, who had already been used to the weird side of fame, didn't seem too bothered. He knew how the media operated and figured the headlines would move on eventually. Angelina, too, was used to being a target and didn't seem eager to play damage control. Their refusal to explain or defend their choices only made them more fascinating to the public. People didn't know what to make of them, but they couldn't look away either. But what exactly led to their divorce? After several years, Billy Thornton finally opened up about the real reason they went their separate ways. The real reason they divorced. For years, the end of Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie's marriage felt like a mystery nobody could fully explain. From the outside, they had what seemed like a once-in-a-lifetime connection. But when the fire burned out just 2 years in, fans were left with a question that lingered for decades. What really happened? Well, the answer wasn't a dramatic betrayal or one explosive fight. It was something slower, quieter, and maybe even sadder. Because, at the heart of it, their breakup came down to who they were as people, and how different their worlds truly were, even when they were deeply in love. You see, Billy and Angelina came from very different places in life, not just age-wise, but emotionally and personally. Billy was in his mid-40s when they got married. He'd already been through multiple marriages, had kids, and lived a life full of ups, downs, and reinvention. He was a Southern guy with simple tastes. He liked routine, privacy, and staying out of the spotlight whenever he could. Angelina, on the other hand, was in her prime. She was barely 25, a rising star, and the world couldn't get enough of her. And it wasn't just about the fame. She had this larger-than-life energy. She wanted to travel the globe, explore different cultures, adopt children, take on humanitarian missions, and make a real impact in the world. And Billy, he wasn't wired that way. He didn't like going out much. He didn't feel at home on red carpets or at fancy galas. He was happiest in the quiet moments, where he would write songs, play music, watch sports, and relax at home. That contrast between their lifestyles wasn't just a difference in hobbies. It was the crack that slowly spread across their marriage. In an interview, he said, "We just had different lifestyles. Hers is a global lifestyle, and mine is an agoraphobic lifestyle. So that's really the only reason we're probably not still together. Maybe because of a different path in life we wanted to take." One of the things Billy has admitted in later years is that he struggled with feeling good enough for Angelina. Here he was, a middle-aged man from Arkansas with a scruffy charm, suddenly married to one of the most beautiful and admired women on the planet. Angelina was not just famous. She was stunning, ambitious, and unpredictable. People couldn't stop watching her. And for Billy, that constant attention didn't feel flattering. It felt unnerving. He began to feel like he didn't belong in her world, like she was meant for something bigger, and he was just tagging along. Now, Angelina probably never said or did anything to make him feel small. But sometimes the pressure doesn't come from a partner. It comes from within. Billy has confessed that he constantly felt out of place, like the world was watching, silently whispering and judging him. And over time, that kind of insecurity doesn't just stay quiet. It starts to change things. He began to retreat and pull back till his heart began to close off. Another major reason their marriage fell apart was that it was just too much and too fast. Their love story was born in chaos. He left an engagement, married Angelina in a flash, and they jumped into a life that was constantly moving. It was passionate, yes, but it didn't have time to breathe. There was no period of adjustment, no space to learn how to really be married to one another. And when Angelina adopted Maddox in 2002, it marked a major turning point. Angelina was all in. She was ready to be a mother. She embraced it fully, even before Billy was emotionally prepared for that role. And it turns out that he wasn't ready for the kind of family life she wanted to build. It wasn't about not loving Maddox. It was about not being in the right headspace. Angelina was moving into a new chapter, one of responsibility, motherhood, and global awareness, while Billy was still living in his comfort zone, and that gap between them grew wider with each passing month. It's easy to assume their breakup must have been dramatic. But according to both sides, it was more of a gradual drift. They just started living separate lives. While Angelina was jetting off for humanitarian missions, Billy was staying home. While she was taking on more ambitious projects and stepping into motherhood, he was pulling away and emotionally overwhelmed. It wasn't that they stopped loving each other, but being different wasn't enough to hold it together. They didn't know how to grow in the same direction, and so they decided to let each other go. When the divorce was finally made public, it wasn't messy, probably because both of them knew there was no villain in this story. They loved hard, but their love wasn't built to last. And that's not failure, that's just life. But how does Billy feel about Angelina today? Does he still think about her? Time has a funny way of softening even the most intense love stories. For Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie, that couldn't be more true. It's been over 2 decades since their whirlwind romance came to an end, and in that time, both have gone on to live completely different lives. But if there's one thing that's clear today, it's this. There's no bad blood between them. They've both been open in their own quiet ways about the respect and affection that still lingers, even if the marriage didn't last. Billy especially has had some surprisingly gentle things to say over the years, and that says a lot considering how intense and public their love story was. You'd expect some bitterness or some defensiveness, but there's none of that. Just a man who once deeply loved someone, and despite how it all ended, still appreciates what they had. In various interviews over the years, Billy has made it pretty clear that Angelina still holds a special place in his heart. He's been honest about the fact that he felt overwhelmed during their marriage, caught up in a lifestyle that didn't feel natural to him. But he never blamed her. There's still admiration in his voice when he talks about her. He praises her as a person, her strength, her intelligence, and her impact on the world. It's clear that his struggles during their time together weren't about her character, but about his own discomfort with the fast-paced, high-profile world she lived in. In an interview, he said, "I look at that time as a great time. Angie is still a friend of mine, and she's a great person, and she's done so much." And maybe that's the most mature part of their story, the fact that Billy has owned his part in the breakup and has never painted Angelina as the problem. These two have never reunited in a romantic way, and probably never will, because they've moved on, a grown-up heart, and lived completely different lives. What they shared during those few intense years was real, and even though it ended, there's no sign that either of them carries bitterness about it. While Angelina has gone on to become a single mom to 6 children, focusing on activism and directing, Billy Bob Thornton took a very different path. After the chaos of past relationships and marriages, he eventually found the calm he had always said he wanted. Billy met Connie England not long after his marriage to Angelina ended. She wasn't a celebrity, and she wasn't chasing the spotlight. In fact, she worked behind the scenes in the film industry, far away from Hollywood drama. And maybe that's exactly what Billy needed. They were together for over a decade before officially getting married in 2014. He's described Connie as someone who makes him feel safe, someone who understands his need for a quiet life with music, family, and space to just be himself. They live a relatively low-key life, far away from the constant glare of celebrity attention. And that's exactly how he likes it. It's the kind of love that's lasted, not because it was loud, but because it was right. In addition to being in a stable marriage now, Billy's also embraced other parts of his life that bring him peace. He's continued to make music, both solo and with his band, the Boxmasters. He's acted in various roles that challenge him creatively, but he's never chased fame the way some others have. He's also focused on his role as a father. Billy has multiple children from past relationships, and he's talked about how becoming a dad changed his perspective on life. He said that, as he's gotten older, he values connection and simplicity more than anything else. In many ways, it feels like Billy Bob Thornton has come full circle. After years of chaos, high-profile romances, and public scrutiny, he's finally landed in a place that makes sense for him. But here's the real question. If Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie had met at a different time, do you think their love would have lasted? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss another untold Hollywood story.